There is a very nice young man who has made a video response to my video entitled Addressing Seventh-day Adventist. I may pronounce his name wrong, and he can correct me if I have. It's spelled MagikhourTruth. I'm going to pronounce it MagikhourTruth. Now, if I'm wrong about that, he can clarify it for me. Anyway, in his response, he is getting on the issue of the Sabbath that I used in my video, and used Acts 27, Acts 20 verse 7, and 1 Corinthians 16:2. And he has shown rightly the Greek language in there, where the word Sabbath is used there, and not the word week. He rightly showed the text, but wrongly interpreted what it meant. Before I get into addressing that, let me just say this. First of all, this is a non-issue with me. The Old Testament Sabbath came to an end in the New Covenant. If Seventh-day Adventists can't see that and recognize that it happened, that there is no command whatsoever in the New Testament for Christians to ever worship on the Old Testament Sabbath. Sabbatarians cannot show me one verse in the New Testament where the Old Testament Sabbath was ever renewed. They cannot ever give me a verse, or anyone a verse, where there's ever a New Testament command for Christians to worship on the Old Testament Sabbath. So to me, it is a non-issue even discussing the Old Testament Sabbath that was never renewed in the New Testament. Second, he talked about how I mentioned that Seventh-day Adventists would not believe that anyone who worshipped on Sunday would be saved. He refuted that, but let me clarify what I meant by that so you'll know. The Seventh-day Adventists believe that if a person worships on Sunday, they either have or will carry the mark of the beast. If you have the mark of the beast, then you will not be saved. So according to Seventh-day Adventists, then, you cannot be saved if you worship on a Sunday. It's plain and simple. There's no argument about it. They believe if we worship on Sunday, we carry the mark of the beast. So they are tying salvation to a day of the week and not Jesus Christ. So now let me get into Acts 27 and 1 Corinthians 16:2, where a form of the Greek word Sabbath, which is Sabbaton or Sabbatu, does appear at least in 8 passages in the New Testament, but it is always translated the first day of the week. For example, in Acts 27, the phrase is translated, the Greek, Mioton Sabbaton, the first Sabbaton, the first day of the week. However, the word Sabbaton is never translated as the seventh day in these passages. Nowhere is the word Mioton Sabbaton translated as the Sabbath day in any of the passages that I mentioned. And there's a good explanation for it. The word is used in these contexts, and Greek scholars overwhelmingly agree that it means a week. Mioton Sabbaton, the first day of the week. Greek scholars overwhelmingly agree that the word Sabbaton used there refers to week. So Paul was correct in saying Mioton Sabbaton, the first day of the week, in Acts 27. Paul was right in 1 Corinthians 16:2 when he said Mioton Sabbaton, the first day of the week, because the word Sabbaton is never translated as the Sabbath day in those passages. So yes, young man, I did study the Greek, and that's why I placed it in the video the way I did. If you want to read something about this, I will post some books at the end of this video that you can read from, if I pronounce his name right, Perschbacher by Danker, who all write on this subject. Thayer, again, I'll post these books at the end of the video where you look at them. and they overwhelmingly agree that the term Sabbaton, as used in those verses, means week. Jesus himself used this term Sabbaton, but he used it this time Sabbaton, meaning twice. And he used that in Luke 8:19, where he told the parable of the sanctimonious Pharisee who prayed, God, I thank you that I am not like the other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, and even the tax collectors. And he says, I fast twice a week, Sabbaton, the same word used by Paul, by Luke in Acts 20, verse 7, and by Paul in 1 Corinthians 16:2. I gave my tithes. The phrase twice a week, excuse me, in the Greek is this time Sabbaton. And Jesus was not saying to the Pharisee, boasting about fasting twice on the Sabbath, but twice during a week. So it is clear that Jesus was using the word Sabbaton there as week. Just as Milton Sabbaton is the first day of the week. A great Hebrew scholar and Greek scholar by the name of Lightfoot wrote a commentary on the New Testament from the Talmudic and Hebraic different books, and he expounded on the meaning of the day week. The Jews reckon days of the week: first day or first Sabbath, second day or second Sabbath, third day or third Sabbath, and on and on. Lightfoot then quoted two different places in the Talmud who alluded to the first of the Sabbatons, about an individual who had stolen an ox. Judgment was going to be passed the following day, or on the second day of the Sabbaton. He again is clearly making the distinction there in them. So from those writers, it is clear that the word used by Luke and by Paul on Sabbaton is week, and not the Sabbath as Seventh-day Adventists want to make it out to be. It is the first day of the week, just as Luke said, just as Paul said. So young man, you actually have the word Sabbaton confused there somehow, and you needed to have studied more a little bit yourself. I can understand maybe you didn't have the tools handy to look at it with. If you had them, you would have found that the word Sabbaton there actually means week, as agreed to by the vast majority of Greek scholars, who recognize it as Milton Sabbaton, first day of the week, just as Luke points out, just as Mark points out, in any other passage pertaining to that, especially in Revelation 1:10 on the Lord's Day. Milton Sabbaton, the Lord's Day, Sunday. So I thank you for your video response. However, in this case, you have missed the mark of proving that I misused the word Sabbaton there, because it is the first day of the week, just as the Bible says. But I thank you for your response anyway.